Awesome. Welcome, guys. I know we got people from all over. We have some softball coaches, baseball coaches, kids, parents. For you guys that don't know me, my name is Ryan Harrison, and I've been doing a few of these visual insight seminars and give you a little bit of my background. I've been training visual performance skills for about 20 years now. I started training because of my father, who started training in 1971 with the Kansas City Royals and working with professional athletes throughout his 50 years. I now have taken over. I am run SlowTheGameDown, and also I'm the director of training for neurodynamic vision. And we also have Max BP as part of our sponsor here, so we appreciate all the people that came from the Max BP emails. And today we got two guys that I've known for quite a while. These are former major leaguers, and I'll let them give a little bit of themselves in just a second. But the first one is Howie Clark. Howie Clark is played for numerous major league teams. He's been a major league hitting coach, minor league hitting coach. He's currently with the Chicago White Sox with their AAA program as a hitting coach. And we also got Jason Lane. And Jason Lane is a former Trojan and major league player, played two positions in the big leagues, which is pretty amazing. One as an outfielder, and then he took a sabbatical in the minor leagues for a while and then made it back as a pitcher in the big leagues. And he is now coached with Milwaukee Brewers as a hitting, but now he's a first base coach on there. And I got to know Jason more closely when he was with Toronto Blue Jays, and I've known Howie. I don't know how long I've known Howie. It's been a long time. Howie's been a fun time. So let me introduce Howie. Give a little bit of background first, Howie, and then I'll have Jason talk.
Yeah, good intro. Thanks, Rhino. I played from California originally, went to Huntington Beach High School. Was drafted by the Baltimore Orioles. Played 18 years professionally. Spent about parts of 6 in the major leagues, not a whole lot of time, but about halfway through my career, I met Ryan and Bill Harrison. And this is not a play on words, but definitely changed the way I looked at the game. Got into coaching when I was done. Coached a couple of years in the minor leagues with the Orioles, was the assistant hitting coach for 3 years. And like Ryan said, now I'm the AAA hitting coach with the Chicago White Sox. And we got a little free time right now, so it's good to do this instead of being in the rain in Charlotte.
And Jason, how about you?
From Northern California, played at Santa Rosa Junior College for 2 years, and then played at USC for 2 years and was drafted as a senior out of USC by the Houston Astros in 1999 and played 4.5 years in the big leagues with them. Made it to the World Series in 2005 and got swept by the White Sox that year. And then was in the minor leagues for a while after a couple tough seasons, and then switched over, converted to pitching, and went through independent balls and got released a few times and made it back to the big leagues with the Padres as a pitcher. And my last year playing was 2015 and got an opportunity to be the assistant hitting coach in the big leagues right after playing with the Milwaukee Brewers. And I was the assistant hitting coach the past 4 years, and this year moved to first base coach. And good to be on the show today.
Yeah, no, this is it's always fun. We've had some single guests in the past, but now we got two guests on here, so we'll be bouncing around a little bit. But Jason, I'll start out with you a little bit. We got to know each other when you were you were with the Blue Jays at the time, and I knew of you from the past, and we talked about some things, and I've been really lucky to be around some great people. And in fact, I got a text yesterday from John Buck telling me, tell Jason hello. He's one of my favorite roommates on there. And so we've had a lot of mutual friends throughout the time. So, we connected pretty well. And, maybe give an example, like at that point, you've been through a lot of hitting instructions. You've seen a lot of different ways. You've struggled, you've had success. And we talked a lot about having a visual approach. How did that connect with you at that time?
It was the timing of it was great because it was I think the first time we connected was 2009. I was in AAA in Vegas with the Blue Jays, and that was the second year in a row that I had been in the minor leagues after being in the big leagues for 4 years. And it was when I was struggling and when I needed to make a change. and to run into you and your dad and to start focusing on vision, which is something I hadn't really paid attention to, or I had some times in my career, earlier in my career, where a couple other players, veteran players, good hitters, mentioned vision to me, but I didn't, it didn't stick. I was chasing this mechanic or this swing, or trying to get back to this feeling that I had in years past when I had success, and chasing the mechanic wasn't really happening. And so that year, learning a different approach and really attacking the vision just changed things for me. And I believe to this day that the year that I converted to pitching was actually probably the year that I got the best at hitting. And for whatever reason, I was just off the radar as a hitter. But I ultimately say some of my best seasons hitting were my last couple of years, and it was all about the vision and the stuff that we had worked on. It opened up a whole different side of hitting to me that I really wish I could have paid attention to earlier, or came into contact earlier and worked on that, because it was the true difference maker for me.
Why do you think? And we get this all the time, obviously, and mechanics are very important to this game and always will. And as we see over social media, the arguments that go on hitting mechanics, that people get away from seeing the ball like they're capable of or need to be capable of. Why was it? How do we make some changes to make this more usable for people to start doing this at a young age?
Yeah. I don't know. That's the challenge, but I think, like Howie and I talk a lot, I think it almost seems like it's too simple of a fix, or there has to be more to it than that. And people will always say, like, yeah, I see the ball, or yeah, of course I see the ball. Like they have that taken care of. But it was really interesting to me when one of the first times when you asked me to give a number, rate myself 1 to 10 on what the clarity I had on the pitch before that I swung at. And when you do that with guys, when they tell you, yeah, I see the ball, and then you ask them for a number and they look at you like, what do you mean a number? Like, and then their first numbers usually are very low on a 1 to 10 scale. And it's like, do you really see the ball though? But I think everyone just assumes, yeah, it's the first thing I keep my eye on the ball. I see the ball, but they don't really know the detail that they can see it at. And then it's about teaching them how to do that. I think early in my career, 2004, Carlos Beltran was traded to us, and he came from the Royals, which you guys had history with him, and we traded for him at the deadline, and he, he's a great player, and he was doing well for us and had an unbelievable run in the playoffs for us. And I remember asking him, I was playing off the bench, and I asked him in the cage one day, hey, Carlos, man, what do you got for me? And he looked at me, and Carlos was real mild-mannered, and he looked at me with seriousness and said, do you see the baseball? I said, yeah, I see the ball. And he looked at me again and said, do you see the baseball? And I said, yeah, I see the ball. You already asked me that. And he said it the third time, do you see the baseball? And at that point I was like, I don't think I see it like you're asking me how I see it. And that was his way of saying, like, he didn't go anywhere else but there on that. And so I just think like my reaction to him on the first question is what most people, yeah, I see the ball. I got that covered. Now let's get to some mechanics. And they don't really have that mastered, and it takes a while, and it takes, practice and to know how to do it.
A lot of people give it, lip service, like you said. And, it seems so simple, yet it's not so simple, because there's so much that takes us away from using our vision. We take it for granted. And, you bring up Beltran, which is cool, because, Beltran's actually part of the reason why I am doing what I do today. And when my dad was working with Kansas City Royals and I went with him, I remember we were with the Royals spring training. We came back like 2 weeks later. Beltran comes running from the outfield and gives my dad a big hug. And he goes, man, I've never seen the ball like this. And I'm thinking, what does my dad know? Oh my God. And so, because I never listened to him as a kid, but, when I saw a player who just won Rookie of the Year and has had some success say that he's seen the ball better than ever, I knew there was something here to teach and get out there. And over time, it's something that you see a lot of players like you and Howie and other guys that when they create that visual approach to the game, their game takes another level. They get away from mechanics, their body reacts, and they start doing things. Howie, going with you a little bit and thinking about that visual plan. I know, throughout your career that keeping that visual plan was kind of a challenge at first and got better as time went on and when you bought into it. And what kept you from getting into having a good visual plan all the time?
Well, not being exposed to one at first, when I remember being when you guys went to the mini camp. So the Baltimore Orioles our minor league camp was in Sarasota. Major league camp was in Fort Lauderdale, and you and your dad came to Fort Lauderdale. There's a mini camp where some of us minor leaguers were kind of going on after the big leaguers. And you gave a presentation. I remember, I think I just played in Double-A. So I'd kind of progressed a level a year. And I remember you guys had the VPX trainers and the vectograms and all this stuff. And I remember, you guys were talking about vision, and I was kind of like, yeah, I got this covered. I'm in Double-A, like I'm good,
I know
and yeah, I got it squared away. And David DeLucci, who was there as well, he took it and ran with it. Like he became obsessed with the vectogram. And David DeLucci's story was he was in Double-A. I want to say it was 97 the next year that he was just still running with it, and ended up having a huge year in Double-A. Got called up to the Orioles when Eric Davis came down being sick, and then David DeLucci ended up being taken by the Diamondbacks in the expansion draft. Had a 10+ year big league career. The rest is history. So after the season, I was like, man, I got to see what he was doing. He was swearing by the visual stuff. So I remember looking on the card and it said Laguna Beach, and I'm like, man, you guys are down the street. So I vividly remember, I don't even remember what batting cages it was that the first time that we met, but to the point is I had to have some kind of buy-in. I had to have something that let me know that I needed to figure something out on my own, basically. And so I remember we were in the cage and you were throwing batting practice, and your dad was giving me, numbers out of the hand, tracking at the contact, among all the other stuff we were doing. And you're throwing it, and I was getting really good, like getting high numbers. The swing felt great. I remember you threw a curveball out of nowhere, and just for the people listening, Ryan had some good stuff. Like it's not like, yeah, like it was a tight breaking ball pitched in college.
One in 50 were pretty good.
But I remember like there was no notice of it, and he threw it, and because I was completely visual, I just reacted to it. And I remember I hit the ball really well. It would have been something in the right center. I pulled it, and I remember I said,
off of me.
Yeah, well, I said, now I get it. And I remember like I had to have that moment to make it realize, because it wasn't anything else going on. It was just that visual. So I kind of went in a roundabout way. What was the initial question you asked? I'll tie this in.
Yeah. What kept you from being in your visual plan more often?
Yeah, it was.
You bought in, obviously. It took you a little bit to buy in. You figured it out. But it wasn't there all the time. And, what got you out of it? What kept you from being like that consistently?
I think, definitely the second half of my career, and when I did spend time in the big leagues, that was the foundational part of it. I think what it did do, I'll kind of try to tie this in, is it helped me evaluate the at-bats, because when I was younger coming up, let's just say I hit a changeup off the end of the bat, right? And I would beat myself up, and I'd want to go to the cage after the game and hit off the tee. Believe it or not, when Jason and I were coming up, there wasn't a lot of like batting cage time. Like the cages at the field were actually just used for whenever there was rain. There wasn't like, you didn't do work before you went to take batting practice. But so I would go to the cage after the game and tell myself to stay back and do all of this stuff. Well, then the next day I'd go out there and the same thing would happen. And until I had a visual plan and understood it to some degree, then I just realized that I wasn't seeing it. Like there's nothing wrong with my swing. My swing was fine. It was doing what I asked it to do. It was just that I made a quick decision. I didn't allow myself to get enough information. I didn't trust what I saw. I saw what I wanted to see and I cut it loose. Maybe I was, afraid to get beat inside, or all of the other thoughts that went through it. And so, I think that's the answer. What got me away from it was wanting to get a hit, being conscious of maybe a fastball in and I'm going to cheat to it, or trying to hit the ball far, instead of just having my plan to get to the release point and giving myself numbers and that being it. Being ready to hit as well. We talk about that, like the swing is happening, right? The swing is happening. My eyes are going to be able to tell me no. I know there's always debate about that, but that was when I was at my best, when I could just keep it that simple. It held myself, I held myself accountable that way.
Yeah.
And, I can, again, Jason and I talk about this all the time, but I cannot think back to a time when I was ready to hit, when I saw the ball early, when I tracked it to contact and my swing betrayed me. Never happened, and let's categorize this. I mean, we'd played a long time, right? You've played, and you played in high school and in college, or like Jason, and through the minor leagues. So it's not like you're dealing with a bad swing. You know what I mean? Like, everyone hits line drives. I think the question is, how do you do it more often, and what's happening when you're not doing that? So, no, it's.
I think, Howie, and
Yeah.
you bring up some good points, but it's like, we're trained, and we got young kids on here. We got, coaches in there. We got all different things. And I think what the biggest problem is, we focus on the wrong stuff. We focus on results. We focus on what other people want us to do. We focus on failure. And we tend to go back to our comfort zone and Jason brought this up. I want to feel good. And, and I kind of joke around, Jason, and you can add to this if you want, is, when guys go to spring training, they all say, I got to feel good. I want to feel good. I want to feel good. But the reality is, when you're at your best, you have zero feel. So why are we searching for feel when we have no feel on there? And that's kind of a big statement. But what happens is, when you got highly visual, both of you guys, when you got highly visual, focused on the task at hand, your body did what you trained it to do over time. And what happens is, these youth players, is a coach yells at them, get your hands up, get more turn on there, get underneath, do this. Then they're focused on their body. And now they're, the stress level gets in there, and they get away from allowing their eyes to work for them.
I was going to say, Jason, you should, if you wouldn't mind talking about, kind of the last thought, the conversation that we've had about, what has to get done before you're able to get that swing off.
Yeah, our assistant trainer in the big leagues, Dave Yeager, who I know I introduced you to, Ryan, and we've had some breakfasts and came by the facility, but he's very much into the vision and also into the mind and the science behind it. And so he's great for me, because he reads all the articles and fills me in, and then I can tie it into vision and translate it to the players. But one day he was explaining to me how the mind worked, and how when guys get task oriented or mechanical, that the brain works just like a computer, and computers work off tasks. So when you type the letter T on the keyboard, that's a command or a task you're asking the computer to do, and it produces a T on the screen. And then once it does the T, then it goes to the next command, which may be an H if you're typing and then it puts that on the screen. And he said that the mind works the same way, and your brain has to complete each task to entirety when it's mechanical before it can move to the next task. And so he said, if you have this long list of tasks or mechanics, like, hey, I want to get my hands loaded, get my foot down, and my weight balance, whatever it might be. I haven't thought mechanics like that in so long. I don't even know what common ones thoughts would be right now. But if you have these two mechanical keys, well, the other important thing was the last focused thought or coherent thought goes to the top of the list. So it started telling me, like, man, I need to be if that's true, I need to be awfully aware of what I got going through my mind in the batter's box. and I better be dang sure what my last thought is, because that's the first thing I'm going to take care of. And if that's to get my hands loaded, well, my brain's okay, I got to get my hands loaded, and then it's to get my stride and my foot down. Okay, I got to take care of that. And oh, by the way, I have about 0.4 seconds to react to a fastball, and then somewhere in there might be see the baseball and then swing and all that stuff. You're cramming your processor up, and you get up there, man, I'm late or whatever. Well, you're doing exactly what you're asking your processor to do. It's just not fast enough. And then you're upset about that, or you think it's your swing. And really, you're just asking it to do too much in too short a time. And I just thought that was fascinating the way he explained it, because when you are hitting your best, and I have heard hitting coaches say, hey, you can't be thinking up there. Well, that's why. So now I think it's important you explain the why. This is why you can't be thinking it, because this is what goes on in your brain, and this is why you're late and you start cheating and you're screwing yourself in the ground or whatever. And so it was when he shared that article with me, I thought, man, what a great way to explain it. I mean, I've always heard you can't be thinking up there, you can't think too much and all that. Well, that's why. It's just there's not enough time in this reactionary event that goes on.
Just to add to that, because you brought this, is it's almost, as a coach, you might say don't think. Well, no, duh, right? We know we're not supposed to think, but when you tell yourself not to think, that doesn't work.
Well, you think about not thinking, right?
Yeah, and even like right now, if everyone listening, don't think about how your neck feels. Whatever you do, don't feel your neck, okay? We don't want to feel it. And all you do now is feel what your neck feels like. And
exactly.
So you want to put those, and it goes into positive imagery as well and visualization, but you want to get your eyes in the right spot at the right time. And when it comes down to it in the action, like you said, is you got to be ball oriented. And if you're foot oriented, or if you're stride oriented, or you're, result oriented, you get away from being ball oriented. And that kind of goes back to what you said about the numbers. That's one of the things, the tricks, it was trying to get you to be more ball oriented and understand what you see, not, yeah, I see.
I always explain to people, like, the numbers drill by far was the thing that changed me the most. And if it was the biggest takeaway for me. I know for other people, it might be some of the other drills, things, whatever, but that for me, it forced the most important thing to happen. If I had to like give a verbal command on or evaluation of what I saw, well, the first thing I had to do was, all right, I got to see something so I can turn around and tell him a number, and then I'll worry about hitting. Well, it defaulted me into the process. I got to see to hit. And I couldn't, nothing else could get into the equation at that point, because I had to do this drill. And it's amazing how when guys start calling numbers at the big leagues, once you finally get them to, because they act like they're above that, or it's like training wheels, right? And you finally get them to start calling them, and their mechanical issues they think they have completely go away, and they start hitting rockets. And you ask them, so how'd that feel mechanically? Oh, that was great. And then they immediately want to stop doing it. And it's like they want to take the training wheels off. All right, now I'm just going to go to hitting. And I always pose the question, like, if just calling numbers out makes you play at your best, makes your ball strike is off the charts, your accuracy, everything is off the charts, just by calling these numbers, like, why wouldn't you call them all the time? Like, if it meant you were going to sign a $100 million deal, would you yell numbers at home plate in a big league game? I would. I'd be screaming all the way down the line. But it's like something about it's like, okay, now I got that. Now I'll just go to, let me start thinking about stuff. And it goes right in the tank right after that. It's crazy to me, like, it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, I'll pick on Howie a little bit, because we got plenty of stories, but I remember Howie giving me a phone call, or giving my dad a phone call and saying, man, I'm just not seeing the ball like I have. I'm all messed up. What do I do? And, Howie, do you remember some of those conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember. Yeah, no, one of the great ones was I was in AAA with the Orioles. We're in Ottawa, and it was they had a really tough, like, shadow, like light dark. There was a bright batter's eye, and during batting practice, and like I was just really struggling. I could usually hit the ball the other way, okay, and I was just smothering the thing. And when you're lacking that barrel accuracy, when you're not hitting it, like, it's very easy to jump to your swing. We don't deny that. Like, we've lived it, So I remember I called and I left a panicked message, and he called back and he was laughing like he does. And it was a voicemail, and he's like, "Oh," he's like, he's like, "You're probably staring, you're getting defensive, blah, blah, blah." I said, "I want you to attack the upper inside part of the ball." He's like, "You really have to see it." And I remember I really struggled with this. The guy I always hit off was a lefty. And, maybe I made the conditions worse than they were by just the panic. And I remember the first day after that, I said, "Okay, I'm going to look for the upper inside part of the ball. Look for that part of the ball," because he had asked which part of the ball I like to hit. And that was the one that kind of suited me the best. And I remember the first day I saw it once in batting practice. And I was like, just stick with it. Like, keep writing it out. The next day I saw it about 4 or 5 times, stuck with it. The next day I felt like I was seeing it a lot better. And right when that started, I remember I kind of put a hitting streak together. And it ended up, like, I remember the hitting streak came to an end, and we were playing in Columbus. I remember Brett Gardner dove and made a diving catch in like left center. But the next day I got called up, right? So I got called up to Baltimore, and there's no way that I would have been able to turn things around like that without just reining me in, like calming me down and getting back on the ball, and that is, I mean, one of the many times, like, there's not enough time on this.
Yeah. So let me ask you, this is for both of you guys, whoever wants to answer this. How do kids, whether you're a little league kid, whether you're a high school kid, whether you're a college kid, or you're minor league or pro, baseball, softball, there's so much emphasis on the other stuff. And how do you separate it? And how do you know what I should buy into?
I'll say something real quick. You asked Jason something earlier, and I thought he was going down this angle, but we've talked about, like, what would you do early on? And I said, I would love an experiment where when kids are just starting to play, right? Like, at some point they're just like trying to hit the ball, right? And what's the first thing everyone says? Got to watch the ball, right? And they start watching the ball, then they start hitting it. And then they start hitting it, and then it starts hitting stuff if you're in the house, right? And then it becomes a little bit more fun to watch where the ball's going. So you stop completing the first task, right? So then you start moving on, and all of the practice, not all of, quite a bit of the practice is just straight pitches where you don't have to use your visual skills to the degree it needs to be. But if you would always add variability somehow, right? Changing speeds, spinning the ball, putting different colors on ball, developing that as a foundational skill, I look at that as a foundational skill, right? And then see what kind of plays out. Like, kids are going to grow, they're going to get different. They're going to go through the awkward phase and whatever. But I think if you continue to establish that and try to shy away from comfortable reps, and so that they know that it's always about that challenge, that visual challenge is what's going to happen. And so whether, like, as you progress in baseball or even softball, I mean, I remember, Ryan, when we would go to some of the schools for softball and watching the pitchers throw and, like, standing behind the net, like, it was unbelievable just how difficult it is for pitch recognition, like, that's the stuff that we'd go and watch. But I mean, I don't understand how that can be an afterthought, and just real quick, I know a lot of times Jason and we hear that, well, I got to get, my swing's got to get right before I can really have, like, a buy into an approach, or before I need to see it. And I mean, maybe, but it's, I still think nailing that visual side, being something of a foundational skill is ultra important.
Yeah, Jason, you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had to do it all over again and go through what it appears kids have to go through now with all the fall ball and extra stuff, like, I don't know if I'd have made it. I mean, I think my roots were based off wiffle ball, which I think that sounds kind of funny, but it's very much what Howie just talked about. When I have a twin brother, and we had battles every night in the front yard, and you're seeing balls duck, dive, curve, whatever. There was no just front toss, controlled environment, same swing, same groove swing on this one pitch the whole time. Like, that's where you learn, like, vision and hand-eye, right? And I always tell the story now, like, even in the big leagues, like, I throw batting practice to guys all the time, and I throw roughly the same speed, try to put it in the same location, try to find their little honey hole, their loop, or they get freaked out if you know, saying you're trying to get them out or something because you're not this Iron Mike. But I always say, if I throw a guy in a day, if I throw him 30 pitches, right, roughly the same speed, roughly the same location. If the first 27 were right there, right, four seam, right in the little honey hole, and the 28th pitch, if I threw a slider that spun totally different, right, overspin, totally side spin, whatever, has the dot, I would probably put a guy on the DL. Like, he would swing and miss at it and probably pull an oblique, which would cost me, our team and myself, my job and whatever. Or I would start a fight. If he didn't go on the DL, he'd look at me and want to come fight me like, what are you doing? And I always say, you know what my response would be? Like, what are you doing? I just threw you 27 pitches of the same speed, same rotation, and one comes up completely different and you swing at it? What are you doing? And then they know the answer. I'm just swinging, right? Like zero vision goal. I mean, it's just autopilot. And so that's one of the things like that I would like Howie says, is you create variability and make it be like you can't just swing. It's not just hit and run practice, swing and worry about the mechanic. It's like bat to ball. I got to wait sometimes. I got to be a little quicker sometimes. The ball's breaking. You know, I think even I always thought it was interesting to me if a guy just took batting practice off a machine on a curveball that's breaking nonstop, and especially one breaking into you, because when a breaking ball on a machine that's breaking into you, you have to be quick and direct to that ball, because the curveball off the machine, it gains ground on you, not as much as like a realistic pitch. So you have to know where it's going to, and then you got to be really short and quick, which sort of helps you to hit a fastball. But you constantly have to have your eyes involved when you're hitting a breaking ball, because you're hitting where it's going to. I often wonder if guys would be better at hitting fastball if they just took breaking ball batting practice. But on the flip side, we only throw guys fastballs. We only throw straight pitches. And 50% of the game now is breaking balls. Every guy almost sees 50%. And I always ask them, when do you work on hitting the breaking ball?
Yeah,
in the game with two strikes, how's that work out for you?
Yeah.
You never work on it. And
a couple things that come up to me about that is it's adapt or die. You know, you need to learn to adapt, and you adapt with your eyes. And even as they talk, fastballs, everyone says, oh, the velocity's higher, but like you said, they're throwing more breaking balls, which is setting us up for bad success of fastballs. But even guys love the fastball because it's straighter. You can have easy vision with fastballs. You can't have lazy cutting balls off speed.
Exactly.
You got to be highly visual. And that's a problem, is everyone wants to feel comfortable. And I get it. Confidence is part of the big part of this game. You got to have that confidence, but you got to give the challenge. And, Howie can speak to this a little bit more, is when he used to come train with me, and I would set him up for failure. And I've had a lot of players that come to me that they fail because I give them that visual challenge to make it more difficult. And they all go, some of them will step up to the challenge, and some of the guys will say, I'm done. I'm not interested in this because I don't feel good when you do this. Instead of learning that adapt or die approach, how do I see it? How can I get myself, because I'm an athlete? And how you could probably even talk about this, and this goes into the max BP, using the max BP with the small wiffle balls. High velocity, we challenged you. We changed the speeds up per pitch, and then we'd also throw in those lovely foam balls.
No, and those were great. Like it was always something. I remember we were indoors at whatever place it was, those foam balls were coming out of that thing. And I mean, these things are moving all different directions, up and down, like, unreal, like pitches, balls can't move like that. But I remember whenever they'd get a point, and I remember you consistently reminded me, because we're swinging that bat that was lighter weight, narrow diameter, right?
Yep.
And you would say, like, you're swinging too hard. You've got to like back it down, like be accurate with it, right? And there was always that sweet spot. And I think that's essentially what Jason and I deal with a lot, is that, trying to do swinging hard for bat speed, right? Trying to get more bat speed. Bat speed's great. Accuracy's better. I used to say like the sweet spot is like double points in a video game, right? If you just hit it in that spot, like it'll go. You don't have to do a whole lot extra. So, but back to that, yes, it was always trying to you challenge it, and it was even better when you'd have a training partner there and get competitive with it, right? Because then there's the level of pressure, and then you guys you start talking trash back and forth, right? And next thing you know, like you're not worried about what your swing looks like. You know what the task is. It's to try to hit basically a hummingbird that's coming at you, you know, and to try to get bragging rights. I mean, it was.
Hey, can
it
you
was
hear
always
me?
it was always good to have those reminders, and then to take them back and implement. And it's tough, man. The environment's tough because the things that we're talking about, you know, how much you and I and Jason believe in them, it's still not the shiny new thing, you know. And I don't think any of us are saying that, you know, the mechanics aren't important, but I also think that people move how they move, and it's very difficult to try to force someone's swing into a position and spend time drilling something to get into a spot that they may or may not even need to get into. You know, it's
So Howie, you bring up a good point, but you know, both you guys, and we got coaches on here.
yeah.
As a coach, how do you deal with the player that wants to fix his swing instead of fix his focus?
I think the first thing is you shouldn't be allowed to fix your swing if you don't have a foundation of vision, because we have nothing to build off of, right? That's what I try to tell guys, like, until you can tell me that you're seeing this ball at a high percentage of accuracy, you know, if it's a numbers thing, until you're calling like 8, 9s, and 10s every time, how can we even go to a mechanic? Because we don't have a baseline of what the mechanic's based off of. You're hitting in a fooled state, you know, and I tell guys all the time, if you're going to hit in a fooled state like that, you might as well go to Vegas and bet red or black. But just don't get mad when you lose, because you know it's gambling. You're betting red or black, and you hopefully get on a hot streak. That's how I hit for a couple years in the big leagues. And it got really frustrating because it screams 220, it screams 200 in the big leagues. When you start realizing what seeing is and hold yourself accountable to that, the answers become really easy. Like the fixes became really easy. I didn't have to go home and just think about how I was going to rebuild my swing overnight to face Gray Maddox the next day. It was just simply, I didn't see the ball, or my intent was off. I didn't attack it the right way because I had a secondary thought or a third thought or whatever. And so I think that, like, until guys show that, like, they have this foundation of vision that's pretty high accuracy or high percentage, it makes no sense to go to the mechanic, because you don't have a baseline to start with on the mechanic. You're hitting in this fooled state. And when I started understanding that, I'll tell you what nauseated me is meeting you 10 years into my career. And once I was aware how many fooled swings I took in the big leagues in the previous 10 years, in the big leagues, it was the previous 7 years or whatever, it nauseated me to think, oh man, how many times I cut a swing loose and had no idea what I was swinging at. And then I was amazed at how I had some results. I mean, I played pretty well a few years in there, and it was like I was just doing that off pure competitiveness and athleticism, I guess. Yeah, I had ideas, but not near at what I was doing from that point on. Not even close.
Yeah, I think Jason, you have to be a good athlete. You got to have the ability. You got to have the drive, the desire to get where you got to. And this is really, it's kind of interesting from a visual standpoint. There's kind of two ends to it. There's the early stages that is beneficial to a lot of people, because if their accuracy's off, like Howie says, we need to clean that stuff up. But then on the other side of it, the guys who are at the top of the game, and this is why I feel like I've been very lucky to be around some of the best athletes, is they're looking for that edge to be consistent and take their game to another level. They've done it to a certain level, but how can they do it more often? And when you look back at, the times that you were successful, you fell into being visual more times than not. Why you fell into being visual? It might have been illness. It might have been fatigue. It might have been that you had energy. It may have been that someone was in the stands, you wanted to prove something, and you had that visual intent, where other days you got caught up in that mechanical intent, the physical intent, or even the mental intent. And, you know, again, my bias is when you get the eyes right, the mind is right, and the body is going to be better than you think it is. Now, and I say that because, yeah, there's still some things like we talk about. You got to work on that swing. You got to work on some stuff, but you got to separate it when it comes to action, whatever action that is, whether it's infield play, outfield play, pitching, hitting, any other sport, you got to get visual first to be successful, consistently successful.
Yeah, I can tell a story that I came up with in spring training last year with Lorenzo Cain, who another Royals player. I don't know if you saw him over there or because he was more recent, but anyway, Lorenzo Cain the year before last year had an amazing year, set the tone. Yelich ended up getting MVP, and a big part of that was Cain was on base all the time, and he had this ability to lay off sliders late and sort of check off of it later than most. It was really impressive. And so there was a game in spring training last year. We were playing against the Rockies, and I was sitting on the warning track where we sit in spring training watching his at-bats, and Lorenzo Cain struck out his first 2 at-bats, which just doesn't happen. I mean, it doesn't happen. It was off a lefty, I think, Anderson. And it was just odd to me, like, man, he's just one of those days. I get it. But his 3rd at-bat, he came and sat next to me on the warning track before he went up there. And, you know, I didn't say anything to him. And he kind of looked at me and he kind of was shaking his head. And I said, "What do you got?" And he goes, "I don't know, man. I'm just not seeing, I just don't see this guy. I'm just not seeing the ball off this guy." And I'm thinking to myself, clearly, I mean, I've never, I haven't seen you like this already. Clearly, but of course I'm not going to start going to like trying to give him tips or whatever. I'm just a major league player. And it's just, I started thinking about myself and I said, you know what? I get it, man. I could list numerous pitchers that I just didn't see the ball off. Sidearm guys couldn't pick their slider up. Michael Wirtz, guy with the Cubs, was a guy couldn't pick his slider up. And I said, I'm thinking to myself, I understand that. I get that. And then it kind of hit me. I go, hey, Lo Cain, what if you went to home plate without a bat? What if you went up there without a bat? You think you'd see him? And he kind of looked at me like I was crazy, and the thought was kind of crazy at the time. And then he looked at me and he goes, "Yeah, I probably would." And I go, "Isn't that interesting, man? Like, if you had to walk up there and just stand there without a bat, you don't even have a bat, and just look, you think you'd see it, and you would. The guy could be throwing 110, and if you didn't have a bat that told me I have to get this bat to a certain part of the zone to hit this pitch coming this hard to get a result, you just stand there and watch, and you'd see the thing like it was on a tee, probably. At least after 3 pitches, you would. But because we have this distraction of a bat and this intent and this so-called action we have to do, and this guy's got some funk to him, we totally give up taking the time to see and just keep swinging at butterflies up there and just come back and say, I can't see that guy. He's weird, you know? And so I often thought, like, there's another thing I wish I had done. On the guys I couldn't see, why wouldn't I have gone up there for as many pitches as it took and pretended I didn't have a bat? Just stand there, like, and look. Because I'm an idiot if I go to swing and right out of the gate. I've already admitted I don't see this guy, so I'm playing roulette, right? Why not just take 2-3 pitches as if I don't even have a bat in hand? I mean, don't even load. Just stand there with your eyes and find out where this ball is coming out of the guy's hand at, right? And then once we get that established, now maybe I'll try to load and to take some sort of swing. But you would solve that deal in your mind right away. It would be like, man, I see the ball. He could shoot it. He could shoot it out of, any part of his deal, and I'd see it.
Mason, you bring up some good points that it gets me excited talking to all you guys and just wanting to have this conversation and everything. And there's a question here from James Becker about what are some of the things that hinder vision, head not still. And one of the things that hinder vision is, like you're talking about, is unfamiliarity or fear of that pitcher's release point. So how do you accomplish that, hindering that vision? You got to change the mindset. And whether it's the way you said it or even in something I know you guys use a lot, is being able, when you look at video, is really getting good at understanding the release point. Another thing is, visualizing how you would approach that pitcher next time you see them. Not go, oh, I swung and missed. Why did I swing and miss? Why did I swing and miss? Instead of having a mindset of going, next time I see that pitch, this is what I'm going to do. And, it goes back to what you hear many stories people say is if I just take a pitch, I start seeing the ball really good because we start relaxing.
Yeah.
And we take a lot of things out. And part of that is, as James says, head becomes still. But, you can't focus on your head being still. You got to focus on getting your eyes, where they need to be at the right time to be able to pick up the release point. And every release point is different, whether it's up and over or if it's lower or if it's, sidearm, whether it's, finding out and getting your eyes, like Howie says, the accuracy right at the right place is part of the deal of being consistent there.
Right. I think I always remember it took me, I got to AAA in, I think my third full season, I got to AAA. Gary Gaetti was our hitting coach. And there would be these right-handed submarine sidearm guys that were fastball, slider guys that it was like, oh man, I got a sidearm warming up. Like I couldn't stand those guys, right? I couldn't see the ball off them, and they never threw hard, but it was like the ball was on it was like a roller coaster coming in there, and Gary Gaetti told me before I went up to the plate, this guy, he goes, hey, start your eyes down at the rubber. Look at the rubber. Don't even look at him. Don't even look at his shoulders. Look at the rubber. I was looking at him like, what are you talking about? He goes, that's where the ball comes out. He goes, you start up here where a traditional release point is. The ball doesn't come out. It comes out down here. By the time you shift down there and pick it up, his 82 looks like 92 or his Frisbee's in the dugout and you've already swung at it. And I was like, man, just that alone right there put me in the vicinity of just staring. And it took a couple at bats to really trust, like I'm looking at the ground down there on the rubber. And sure enough, the ball comes out of there. And it was like, from that day on, I didn't mind those guys. Actually, like I said, most of them usually didn't throw as hard. It became much easier. But I spent 3 seasons, already felt like I was beat against a sidearm pitcher just because of that.
Yeah, and that's where we talk about fine focus and soft focus. And, I talk about this a lot is we only have a small area of clarity of vision. If that clarity of vision's aimed in the wrong spot, doesn't mean you don't see it. That's why people say, I see it, but they don't see it and slow it down. So when you got your fine focus right at that release point at the right time, and Howie, I know you could talk about this quite a bit, is when you were consistent, you used to go get in the bullpen a lot to work on it, is getting your fine focus in the right spot at the right time. Man, that ball looked like a beach ball and would slow down.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think it's an interesting question when you ask players like what they look at, right? Because everyone kind of looks out there, but guys don't have a legitimate visual strategy. I think it's very easy for guys, especially when things aren't going their way, to get a little bit defensive. When you get defensive, you stare. And when you stare, it's essentially a reactive state. I know we want to be reactive in the moment, but it's almost like you're just reacting to the ball coming out of the hand. But in my opinion, you're late. You have to have these proactive strategies like you're talking about, whether it be pre-pitch with the eye shifting, which in the last few years, I would talk to players and challenge them to do that. And it's very uncomfortable for people to take their eyes off of the pitcher. Let's just say if he's in the stretch before he comes set, whether you're moving between pitcher and shortstop, pitcher, second baseman, gap, whatever it is, but just to keep the eyes moving and fresh. So you have this process to get to the release point. And hey, man, it's tough to do. It's tough to be there all the time, but you got to practice it to get better at it, And I think a lot of times guys are afraid to try it because essentially each at-bat is the most important at-bat, right? What if we said, hey, Ryan, I need you to invest this at-bat. Like Jason was saying, I need you to take 2 strikes, right? You're not seeing the ball. You're swinging at the ball out of the hand. You're not recognizing anything. Would you do it? If you say invest, yeah, okay, you know what? Take 2 strikes. You might strike out, right? But you haven't been really doing much better. Or are you going to keep doing the same thing because you can justify it by, well, now I'm 0 for 5, I got to get a hit, or I got to do this, Like things like that compound. But having that strategy and understanding, like we're talking hitting, it is absolutely fundamental for defense.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, like,
I was going to bring that up.
understanding, like I can remember Sid Thrift when I was coming up with the Orioles. Sid Thrift was the farm director, and he and your dad went way back with Pittsburgh. And I remember Sid talking about, I remember playing third base. And I didn't play third base a whole lot. I just knew that there was a lot of big guys, and it seemed really, really close. And just about shifting your eyes from the pitcher to the point of contact, right? Like knowing that space out in front of the plate where I have to get my eyes to at the right time to get that break on the ball. And the fascinating thing is it's everywhere. I mean, when you told me about the shadow on the ball, it messed me up on everything I would watch, right? It's catching, on a backhand, taking your eyes to the outside part of the ball, right? Or all of the little details in the games that you play, we kind of start to become obsessed with it. And I know Jason has another good story about that with a Brewers Hall of Famer. And he was just telling me this the other day, and it's like, go to the people who've done it and done it well, and then they'll let you in on the secrets.
Well, it's hard because, everyone thinks they have the secrets these days. And, media, social media, whatever, video, everyone's got the secrets. And, even someone had written a question here about, with all the techniques being used, how do you fight between all these different techniques of what we do? And my bias, I'm a little different, is, hey, success is the right answer.
Yeah. How's the ball coming off? If you're hitting balls of pure flight or whatever, like that wins. If you're not chasing sliders, you're not chasing pitches, and the ball's coming off with true flight. I mean, you're kind of winning, but that's such a hard thing to say when you haven't seen the guy hit or seen, there's some basic fundamentals and all that. But I thought it was really interesting. My first year coaching here, Howie brought up, I told the story to him the other day that we got Robin Yount, Hall of Famer, in the dugout for 10 days or 2 weeks in spring training. And this guy started in the big leagues at 18 years old or 19 years old, right out of high school. It's it was an all-star at shortstop, all-star center fielder, and 3,000 hits. And he's in the dugout, and I'm coaching, and none of these players will go talk to him, and he's sitting there talking to his buddy Gantner, Jim Gantner. And no players are really talking to him. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, man. This Robin Yount, like, I'm going to go talk to him. And so as the hitting coach, I said, hey, Robin, what do you got for me, man? You got 3,000 of those things. Like, what's the ticket? And I was blown away with what he said. He goes, he said, I realized really early on, if I could see it, I could hit it. I could hit a bullet out of a gun if I could see it. And he said, I got crazy obsessive about seeing the baseball. And I'm thinking, someone's messing with me right here, man. You're speaking my language. Like, no one talks like this. And they especially didn't talk about it back then, when you were playing. And he said, when I was at shortstop and I was getting fungos, the fungo hitter would throw the ball up. I'd watch him throw it up. I'd watch it come down. I'd watch him hit it. I'd watch every hop. I'd field it. I'd throw it to first base. I'd watch it out of my hand all the way to when the first baseman caught it. And then I'd watch him throw it all the way in. I just started getting crazy obsessive about just tracking balls all over the park, just training my eyes to see the ball, see spin nonstop. And that's all he did. And that's all he said. He didn't give me one other thought about hitting than that. 3,000 hits.
Yeah. And, what it comes down to is the ball is the target. And, I tell people this too, is if you're shooting guns or bow and arrow at a target range, you don't just pick it up and shoot it. You got to pick up the target. You got to, and that's what you're doing.
You try to hit the bullseye. You try to be perfect, right? You don't just try to hit the side of the wall, you know?
You try to be accurate on there. And that's kind of goes, I'm going to kind of wrap a few things up because like I said at the beginning, this could be a 10-hour conversation. And we talked before we went live here is these guys like to take walks, and that would be a great episode, a daily walk with these guys. Good tips on there. But, when you think about, when we talk about sports vision and a lot of stuff we're talking about is a visual approach, and there are visual skills involved. There's training that can train some of these visual tactics, visual techniques. There's even evaluation. Some guys need to have their eyes checked. They don't have that accuracy on there. And And then there's also, the what I call the tactical training of how I get Howie to be more visual. How did I get Jason Lane to be more visual? You got to manipulate with every single player that you're working with. And even Maria had asked a question about the Yankees. She said she always notes that different stances to each player. Is there a certain stance that's better for seeing the ball? And, not really, as long as their eyes are giving their brain the right information. There are some guys that have height issues that we might change their head alignment because of the way their eyes are aligned and work, which doesn't make sense a lot of times, but it does because now the brain's getting cleaner information. So you want to get them into a position. And I remember a player with the Reds, and God, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but he was a big, strong dude, home run hitter. And, because his neck was so tight, he would get caught up where he would only see with one eye. So we want to make sure both eyes are in a good position to be able to hit to that. And then also, Tony had asked about, did Manny, this was a little private, but he asked me about if Manny did some training, Ramirez and Barry Bonds. And yeah, I do know, I did not work with Manny, but I know Manny was a very visual hitter. He used visual tactics and different tools. And then, and I know Barry, my dad worked with Barry when he was a minor leaguer, and Barry had phenomenal vision skills. But it was almost like you said about Robin Yount. He wanted to be the best. He wanted to make sure he kept his vision engaged at every single moment and being able to pick that ball up early out of every release point and track it further. It's not easy, but it is a opportunity for athletes from young to old to get more efficient at doing that. Howie and Jason, in this time that we're in today, you bring up wiffle ball, Jason, which is good. And I think, people want to know how they can stay ready. If they're not able to see live pitching, what can they do to be ready? And what can they do to practice? Or, you kind of hit the spot of what you would change, but, guys want to know these questions. How do I get drafted? How do I know to go to the next level? What are some of the things, where I can take my game to another level? Let's see if you guys have any suggestions for these.
Yeah. In these times, it's kind of, everyone seems to have a unique situation. Some people are able to get outside and train. Some people are completely locked down, whatever. I have a call list of players, some AAA players for the White Sox that I have to call and keep in touch with. And I've been doing it every week, and right after everything got shut down, it was, these guys are chomping at the bit. We were just about, we're playing some big league games in spring training, about to start minor league games. And these guys are like trying to stay at that level, and I was trying to get them to power down a little bit. Like, you only have so much mental energy to expend basically over the course. Like if you are continuing to drain that, it's going to be tough once you crank up. But what I did give them the challenge is it's one that your dad gave me, that every off season I'd always want, what do I need to do? What do I want to work on my eyes or whatever. And he'd say, Howie, just like your body, your eyes need to rest. He said, but if you can spend 5-10 minutes would be better of visualizing and kind of playing your highlight reel and seeing some of the best balls you hit, which ironically, you can see the ball very well. You can recreate that image. And he would give me all these different strategies, which I think if anyone is interested, which it's an invaluable tool, and contact Ryan to get more details on it. But he would say, when you do that, when you get done, how do you feel? And you're ready to go play. It's getting that brain, getting your mind in the right, it's that right frame to go out there and perform. And it's a really cool state to be in. So that, and I think, talking about wiffle ball with Jason, I think there's tons of value in play. I think guys are afraid to play and just kind of swing without the intent of having this quote unquote perfect swing. Like the wiffle ball, I had a manager in Syracuse one year, AAA, and when a guy would be struggling, his name's Marty Peavy, he'd come in, he's from the South, he's bull-legged, he'd come in and he'd say, okay, and he'd throw a bat to someone, and it had kind of the barrel half cut out, kind of like an old Jimmy Reese fungo. And he'd say, all right. And he'd tell the guys to clear out of the clubhouse. I mean, it was a smaller clubhouse. And he'd bust out tape balls, and he started firing them at the guy. And this guy's taking rips in the cage or in the locker room. And he's like, see, your swing's fine. He's like, you just got to have some fun. So, I mean, I think people are a little bit tentative to kind of like mess up their swing, and just understand, like, you know, your best swings are in there. We just have to allow it to happen. You know, if your conscious thought in the batter's box is on the baseball, let your subconscious do the swinging, right? And it's getting a little deep, but the swings are in there. Just do your task, do what you need to do, and be as good as you can at with your visual skills, picking up the ball, tracking at the contact. Like, good things will happen. So a little bit long-winded, but I say visualize and play.
Yeah, I think, you know, you're not going to lose your skills that much. It'll take a little ramp up, but visualization is powerful. And, you know, just play, enjoy. And, you know, the worst thing I think could happen is people train too hard in this for nothing, you know, or not knowing when, and then they're burnt out. And that's the key, whether it's a kid or a pro guy. We don't want to burn them out. We want to keep it exciting and keep them working on skill sets that's going to, you know, keep going a little bit more.
Yeah. I think there's so many little things you can do and to improve that. I mean, we're watching a show at nights on Netflix called F1 Formula One to Drive to Survive, right? And I'm watching these drivers do juggling stuff and before they go into the car, and you can tell like the vision on, I mean, traveling at 200 miles an hour, how important it is, but there's so many different ways that you can work on it and Howie and I, we go out and play catch a couple days a week to keep our arms in shape. And just in playing catch, we're calling out numbers and how we're seeing it and when we would swing. A hitting coach one time told me, hey, let the ball tell you when to swing. Take a round of BP and sit there and let the ball tell you when to swing. And I was like, what are you talking about? Just let it tell you. Swing when it tells you to swing. It was another way of saying, you know, you see the ball with clarity or whatever, but I would take these, I would sit there and I'm like, all right, when it tells me to swing, I'm going to swing. And I'll be danged if you listen to the ball with your eyes, it would tell you exactly when you needed to hit. Even the ball at your neck, it'd tell you, if you're going to swing at this one, it's going to hit you in the neck. There's a time and point at which I should swing to hit it before it hits my neck. And it'd tell you that most people wouldn't listen to it because they'd get the heck out of the way, right? But there's so many ways that you can train your eyes. And I always say to like the big league hitters when they get to spring training, oh, they need so many at-bats, my timing's off. And I'm like, what does that mean? I used to say it for 10 years. Yeah. But after that, I don't accept, like, timing to what? 96? What if they throw you 86? I said, all you need to do is know where the ball's at relative to where you're at in space. As soon as you know where the ball's at, you have your timing. It's just you're gonna say it needs to be 100 at bats or however many at bats, and then like I'm good. No, it's one pitch to me. It's one pitch, and then you know where the ball's at. You know, it can be that quick. That's the best pitch hitters. You know, like pinch hitting's brutal, but it is because you think it's hard. If you go up there and say, I just need to figure out where the ball's at, you got a fighting chance, and you're right into the bat. It can take one pitch.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Jason, because, you know, we all hear the same thing. We've got to get my timing. And I always ask players of all different levels, what is timing? And they're like, and I said, and how do you start time? Timing is, you know, it's a vision thing. It's getting that information through the eyes to the brain to the proper reaction. Obviously, the more time we have, the more we're going to make those reactions better. But, you know, it's all related to how well you perceive object in space, and whether it's depth perception, tracking, clarity, all those different skill sets, but how well you see that and then how well you react to it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, you know, when you're talking about having more time, I mean, that's essentially what you want. You want more time, right? So if you're working on trying to pick up the ball out of the hand, right? And let's just say you become obsessed with it, and you're able to give yourself an extra, I don't know, 6-8 inches of time, like in baseball terms, that is so huge. Why do the best hitters tend to swing at strikes more often than the guys who aren't? They're commanding the strike zone. They're seeing the ball better than the other guys, right? And I think, you know, people always want to jump on, say, oh, look at their swing so perfect. Like, if I just swung like that, I would have the results. And then Jason and I take him into the video room and we say, hey, look, you have a 37% chase percentage, right? You are cheating to the inside pitch. We can show you. Look what happens when you swing at a fastball in. You do no damage. There's nothing. There's no slug. There's no results. But when you swing at this area, look at, average is through the roof, line drives, high exit velocity, all the stuff that we're trying to get. And it's a funny thing, man. It's you can steer it in the right direction. Like the great hitters are doing that. And one thing that Jason was talking about the when to swing, we spend all our energy. Most of the players spend their energy on how to swing instead of when to swing. Yeah. If you trust, there's something to be said about trusting your swing, and I think that's, as you progress from little league and high school and college, like you should have it. And people tend not to trust their swing and they're not having the results. Yeah. But, you can't always base it. I mean, unfortunately, you can't always base it on that, because you can do everything right and have an 0 for 4. And I for sure have had a 4 for 4 where I knew I was in trouble the next day because a couple of swinging bunts and a broken bat and, you name it. But yeah, it's a tough game.
It is a tough game. I'm going to wrap this up, and Jason and Howie may stay on a little bit longer towards the end, but I know we're past our hour on here. But I want to follow up on 2 questions and sum a few things up. Carrie had asked, do you talk about visual aspect of hitting? Could you put this into BP with a round of no bat to start batting practice? And here's the thing. Yes, you can. The problem with it, though, is people go in there very lazy without the visual intent. So they're just standing there and they're not getting anything out of it. If I had, that's one way of doing it. I would try to get players into the bullpens and work on tracking real live pitching with intent. And that's where they can do it without a bat. But you can definitely do it in BP as long as they have that intent. Another question I wanted to answer was, and this you guys might want to answer this. How often does vision training change from off-season work compared to in-season training? I mean, it's all
I'll let Howie take a shot at that. I did it year round. I mean, I've tried to master it year round, and I hammered it in the off season, like in the batting cage and stuff. But I was just gonna say one thing about the rounds of BP. It's interesting in the big leagues. Like I would have the guys who come in and they want to get loose in the cage and flips or me throwing to them, and every time the first round's just a complete waste of bullets out of my arm because the swings are mangled. It's awful. And it's like, go take a lap, man, and get loose. Don't come in here and get loose off my arm, take a lap. But big league guys aren't going to take a lap. But I started challenging them like, hey, before you jump in here, jump in that cage that's got an iron mic. And I'd have a glove on their backhand, right? Left-handed glove for a right-handed hitter. And I'd say, just catch 10 balls, before you jump in here. And it was incredible how just 10 balls, whether they had real intent, I mean, you'd think they would for 5 of the 10 maybe, but if not, like when they got in the cage, their first round of swings with a bat was way better. I mean, it was like their eyes were already moving at something because, hey, they have to catch the ball. So just to catch balls out of a machine as a first round, I thought was something. It's a little bit more than just standing there watching. But also another thought I had real quickly on the same thing is in an inter-squad game, I challenged our minor league coordinator to send guys to the plate in an inter-squad game without a bat for 2 pitches, right? They got to go to the plate in a competitive at bat against a pitcher without a bat for 2 pitches. Now, the count's either going to be 1-1, 2-0, or 0-2. But they have to throw 1 fastball and 1 breaking ball. So it's a 2-pitch game, but they got to show you 1 of each. If you use the information, it shouldn't matter whether you're 1-1, 2-0, or 0-2 because you've seen the information. If you've used it right without a bat with 0 distraction, and then you go to hitting depending on what the count is. And people say, yeah, but if I'm 0-2 or whatever, no, it doesn't matter. You're still swinging at strikes and taking balls 0-2 as opposed to 1-1 or 2-0 or whatever. You just want a little more room for error. I thought that would be a fascinating drill, and for pitchers, if they could land a fastball on a breaking ball, knowing the guy doesn't even have a bat in the hand. What a mental challenge that was, But I haven't got him to do that yet. But
just to add on your tracking, that's where we use the wiffle ball machine, the Max BP, and they can do it and catch with their backhand and so it may not hurt as much as a real baseball coming at them
Yeah.
on their
Yeah.
softball.
Exactly.
But those are definitely great drills. And, I want to thank Max VP, for helping host this, and also Neurodynamic Vision. And if you guys want to learn more, we're working on an academy for people at academy.ndvperformance.com, which is going to be some education, training programs, more products, and all those things like that. Or reach out to me at SlowTheGameDown. Ryan at SlowTheGameDown is another way to do that. And I want to thank you guys all for joining. We got some more exciting people coming up. I got a neuroscientist we're going to be putting on. We got I got a long distance shooter that's going to come in and talk about focus, which is excited about that one. And we got performance specialists, all different people, just talking about the visual aspect of the game. It's not the getting your eyes checked. It's not about poking our eyes out. It's about understanding how to use these eyes and get your eyes to work for you. And some of it is training, some of it is doctor, and some of it is just coaching. How we coach a visual task in everything we do. So again, I appreciate you guys, Jason and Howie, if you guys want.